Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with Paige Totaro as she shares about her solo travels as well as family travel with twin 12-year-old girls. Should be a fun ride.
Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean Go Solo Live? Have you ever been asked, why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Joining me today is Paige Totaro, and she will be sharing with us some amazing solo adventures. Welcome, Paige.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Great to have you here. We like to just jump right into the story. So tell us a little bit about where you are right now. Where are you located?
I am in Alexandria, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Awesome.
I've lived in this area most of my adult life.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about what you do.
Right now, I am a travel planner. I have two companies. One is my travel blog, and that's called All Over the Map. That has evolved into a travel planning company because people just kept asking me for advice, and I figured I might as well monetize that.
Absolutely.
Then last year, I started a tour company for organized small group tours. Along with a couple of other travel bloggers, and that's called Unquote Travel.
Fantastic. And you'll be able to tell us at the end of the show where to find all of those, but it's always good for people to have a little bit of perspective about who you are walking in.
Sure.
How did you get started doing your solo travel?
Doing my solo travel? Well, it's interesting because I have always traveled with groups or with friends when I was younger. And then I had twin babies in year 2000. And when they were about 10 years old, I pulled out everyone's passports. I had gotten them passports, but I realized that they had all expired with nothing in them.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we had not traveled outside of the country with them at all. Even though when they were born, we had these great plans to take them everywhere. And in fact, when they were younger, we kept thinking, well, maybe we'll take them out of school 1 year and we'll travel the world. And I always had in my head that we would do that when they were in fifth grade. And then fifth grade came and went and we hadn't done it. And then we started realizing that, it wasn't just going to happen. We had to kind of make a plan, which sounds silly, but somehow we just hadn't ever sat down and made the plan to do it. And so we started planning. And in their seventh grade year, we took them out of school and traveled around the world for about 11 months total. So that was family travel. That
Absolutely.
was a lot of family time.
How did that go? I mean, there's a lot of women who would be like, how did you manage that? And while we focus on solo travel, there's a lot of women who are in a variety of family situations who are my listeners. Let's dig into that just a little bit.
Okay, sure. Well, that, like I said, it took a lot of planning, and it also took a lot of things falling into place just right. Starting with my husband, who's the main breadwinner in our family, he went to his company and sort of proposed the idea. What would you think about if I took a year off and did this? He was actually, I think he was a little bit disappointed that they said, that sounds great. I think he wanted them to fire him so that he wouldn't have to come back.
Okay. Well, there can be some of that, right?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, just wanting to take a big break and never come back. But this gave us the safety net of being able to come back in a year and start right back where he was, which was good and bad. And I can talk a little bit about that too. But so once we had that sort of permission and safety net, then we looked at renting out our house while we were gone, so that would cover the cost of keeping our house. And some people will sell everything to start their traveling. And I had seen that one of my kids' preschool teachers had done this sort of year-long trip, and they had sold everything, including their house, before they left. And when they came back to the same area, the real estate market had kind of exploded, and now they could not afford anything. And they didn't have income to show that they could borrow money. So we learned a big lesson from that.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, and that, they weren't wrong to think about it that way, but the circumstances made it really difficult when they came back. So that's why we decided to do what we did, which was to rent out our house at a rate that would cover all of our house expenses. And that worked out really well.
Awesome. So you had a solid, consistent rent,
Mm-hmm.
paying the bills, mortgage, whatever that is, for the time that you were gone. So at least from a financial perspective, that wasn't a massive weight that you were working with. Okay.
Yeah, we absolutely could not have done it without that.
Sure. Right.
And we kept to a very low budget for our travels. We aimed for spending $100 a day on food and lodging for the four of us. And on average, we were able to stick with that. So of course we had more expenses for transportation, but for our food and lodging, we were able to stick with that budget.
That is fantastic.
Well, it helped that we went to a lot of places where the cost of living is pretty low. We spent about 4 months in Southeast Asia, where it's pretty easy to do that.
Right.
Live on that amount.
But it makes a difference. And again, going in with a clear plan and intention. So how long did you plan ahead of actually, pulling the trigger and going?
It probably took us about a year of planning. I think it was right about a year where we really decided we were going to do it. And then, we had to work through, what are we going to do with the kids' schooling? What are we doing with the house? What are we doing about income? How are we dealing with banking? Lots and lots and lots of issues that we had to deal with. And so we kind of knocked them out one by one. We had a giant to-do list and ultimately got them done. One thing that we didn't really plan on was when we planned on renting out our house, we were planning to rent it out furnished and leave some of our stuff there.
Right.
And we had a little trouble finding someone to rent it furnished. The renters that we ultimately had didn't want any of our stuff in there. So we spent the last month or so before we left packing up all of our stuff and moving it into a storage unit that we packed to the very gills, instead of really planning our actual travel. So our first month on the road was a little chaotic because every night we were planning the next day, basically.
Right. You had to kind of wing it a bit at that point.
Yeah. But once we kind of hit a rhythm, it was all right. But
that's amazing though, really, when you think about it. Like it's taking a lot on, again, you're doing the whole house, you're handling all of the logistics that you have to handle while you're gone. The kids out of school and all of that. So yeah, it was a lot. How old were the kids again?
They were 12. They turned 13 on the road. So that was their 7th grade year.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And, so what was their impression of, was this exciting, crazy, some of both?
Well, when we first proposed the idea, they did not want to do it. They had no interest in doing it whatsoever. In our area, middle school is 7th and 8th grade. So they really wanted to go and experience middle school.
Sure.
Now, for every adult they ever met, every adult was like, oh, God, yeah, middle school. Nobody likes middle school. Skip it.
Nobody likes it.
And plus, that's going to be awesome. This is such a great opportunity, blah, blah, blah. So eventually they started thinking, well, maybe this is going to be okay.
Okay.
It was, they were not the most enthusiastic about the trip beforehand. But as I often say, they could have made it a lot more difficult than they did, being 12-year-old twin girls. They were great travelers, I have to say. They were really good. And we had a great time as a family.
Cool. I mean, that makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
it
can
does.
remember family vacations when I was 12 and I made my parents miserable to the point where they're like, just go away.
I know there was that fear. I will admit, my husband and I both had a little bit of anxiety about that, but they ended up being great travelers. And one of the things that I didn't really think about beforehand, maybe it's crazy, but I was only thinking about all the great travel and the great experiences we were going to have. I wasn't really thinking about the great family time we were going to have. Now, we have never spent that much time together as a foursome.
Who does?
Right. So it was, that part was surprising and wonderful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I'd like to still segue into some solo travel conversation,
Yes.
but what was your travel experience before you did this whole family trip? What was your personal travel experience?
I had traveled a little bit when I was younger. When I was in high school, I did an exchange program going to Italy, which was probably, I would say, my first kind of solo experience, where I went and lived with a family way up in the mountains in the north of Italy.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. I'm still in touch with that family. It was wonderful.
That's awesome.
And then I traveled to Europe a couple of times during college and after college. And then I went to graduate school in Amsterdam for a year. So I'd had a good number of experiences overseas, mostly in Europe. But then, like I said, I thought I would keep going, and I don't know, my twins were a little overwhelming.
Yes, that I imagine that happens.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But, I really wanted to give them that exposure to other cultures that had made such a difference in my life as a teenager, to have that exposure, to really understand that there are other cultures out there and they don't all think the same way.
Exactly.
As we do here. So that was my big impetus for taking them abroad. And then once I got back, I was doing travel blogging and travel writing. And like I said, I was starting to give people advice about traveling. And I don't know, somehow, maybe it was a reaction to all the family time, but I started thinking about taking some trips just on my own.
Perfect.
And, some were, I guess there are different ways to travel solo. So one of my first experiences was going with a group of women, but they were women I had never met before.
I'm all for that. I fully agree that is still considered solo travel if you're traveling with people that you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was taking it to another level, doing a new experience, which was overnight hiking and camping.
Okay. Is that not something that you've done a lot of before?
I had never done it before. And it came about through a writing group I was in on Facebook.
Nice.
One of the women proposed this event that would be all women. We would talk about writing, we would do some writing, and we would walk. We would hike. And we ended up choosing Newfoundland on the east coast of Canada.
Wow.
And there were about 30 of us that met up for the writing workshops. And then about 10 of us set out for the hike.
Sure.
And like I said, I had never done this before.
Okay.
I borrowed a lot of equipment, too much equipment, really. I was carrying way too much on my back.
That's your first lesson, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. I could have done with about half of what I had. But that was a really valuable experience for me. Just the first night sleeping outside in a tent that I put up, boiling my water over the fire.
Yes.
That was so empowering, just to know that I could do that. I mean, I'm a city girl. I had never, I had done some hiking, but that would be a couple hours here and there. I'd done some camping, but that was driving in a car somewhere and maybe putting up a tent next to the car, with a bathroom and running water nearby.
Exactly.
So out in the middle of, well, not the middle of nowhere. We were right by the ocean. It's a beautiful trail, the East Coast Trail of Newfoundland. But it was tough. It was tough.
And again, it's one of those brand new experiences. So you're out of your comfort zone in terms of the people that you're with. You're out of your comfort zone in terms of the activity that you're doing. Like, this is a stretching exercise.
It really was. It really was. And I knew that I needed that. I felt like I needed it. I wanted it to have this challenge, a physical challenge, a mental challenge. I frankly was probably more scared of doing the writing workshops that I went up there for, because that was something new to me too. I mean, I kind of stumbled into writing from the blogging that I was doing.
Okay.
But I had never done writing workshops where you share.
Right. Like that formal process. And
yes.
And where you're getting other people's opinions of what you've done.
Yes. So that was scary.
Absolutely.
But it ended up being probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. We ended up with a group of women that we bonded really well. We would walk separately during the day. Everybody had a different pace. There was so much just time to reflect and think and process our ideas. And then we just ended up really bonding as a group too.
What were your key takeaways from that experience then? And I'm actually asking both in terms of your writing, because there's a lot of people who listen who do a lot of journaling or blogging. And it's, just that part is still helpful for people to understand, like, the time away to actually focus on creative work is important.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a pretty long trip. Altogether, it was about 2 weeks. That was the longest I'd ever been away from my family. Oftentimes when I was hiking, I mean, all you could think about is really where your foot is going to fall next. This was, it's an established trail, but it's rough, and it's right next to these cliffs, right next to the ocean. So you had to pay attention to where you were going. And I think, that sort of meditative hiking, was so good for me. It really freed me up to just, my brain was going in so many different directions where, normally I have to remember this, I have to think about that. And here, all I was thinking about is just the next step, just the next step in front of me, and maybe where I'm going to camp that night. But
somewhat meditative?
Very much so. Yeah. It was just wonderful.
There's something to be said for getting out into nature. And I, too, I'm a city girl. I love walking in the crowds of the city and can get lost in that, too. So the times that I have gone out into nature and embraced that, it's cathartic and cleansing in a way that I don't know that I could expect. I don't know that I would have thought, I'm like, oh, nature, I have to be careful. But when you're focused on putting one foot in front of each other and you're allowing your mind not to think about what am I doing for dinner? What's the commute like? All those kinds of things. Right. It changes the way that you flow. It's like it gets the juices flowing differently, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah. You just feel like spaces are opening up in your brain, that are usually occupied with those other day-to-day sort of things. When you don't have to think about those, it's just lets those ideas run around a little bit more.
And in fact, in being with this group of not associated women, were there a lot of people who came with travel partners or friends, or was it more?
Only one. I mean, there were only 2 women in our group that knew each other beforehand.
That makes a difference too, because then you're feeling out that variety of people rather than people having already formed the groups of sorts.
Yeah.
So what has this type of journey led to for you?
Well, I guess, I mean, that trip really gave me the confidence to do more solo travel. I mean, I love traveling with my family and my kids, but it's just not always practical. And now as I'm doing more writing, I sometimes will get invited on trips to go and review a hotel or, experience a destination. And they're not always willing to pay for other people other than myself. So, that's my work trips. It is work. I mean, I do I do count that as work travel because
It is.
I'm not going there because I want to necessarily. I mean, usually I'm going to places that are pretty nice, but
Right. That's still, you're going there because somebody's asked you to come and you're getting paid to do work. So
exactly.
there is a different agenda in there, which I'm all about letting somebody else pay for our travel.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was sort of the next kind of solo travel that I was doing, is more this sort of arranged business travel. But again, that kind of opened me up to the idea that, I could go, just do an independent trip by myself. So last year I took a trip to Cuba by myself. I had a work reason to go, but it was not an organized trip. I put it together myself. I found my Airbnb. I stood in line to exchange money, and that was just me.
Awesome.
And that was probably the first time I had done that, of just going me, with no other organizer, no person I'm meeting up with, just me. And that was pretty cool.
So tell us about what your Cuba experience was.
No, it was a quick trip because I was going down there. My work excuse for going there was meeting some tour operators that we would be working with at Unquote Travel.
Yes.
And so I was only there for a couple of days, but I just walked everywhere. Occasionally I would hail one of those cool old taxis, somebody to drive me down the Malecon.
Sure.
I had to have that photo, but mostly I was just walking around the city and just to see, you go from the very beautiful and charming old part of the city.
Yep.
That is a UNESCO heritage site. It's all restored, very tidy, very clean, lovely. And then not far from there, you have sort of the center of the city where the Haitian people live. That's a little run down. The streets are full of potholes. It's a bit rougher in terms of infrastructure, but
sure,
people are so friendly everywhere. I mean, that was one of the things that I knew beforehand, that people were going to be very friendly and interested in talking to me about, relations between the countries. And although people are still a little hesitant to be very open about their, thoughts about Cuba, they still are worried about the repercussions of speaking ill about the government there. But they were curious about, what I was doing there, why would I want to come there? I loved being able to just talk to anybody on the street.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I could just walk, I could go anywhere. I saw a neat looking building over there. I would just walk over. Nobody would say, no, I don't feel like doing that. I want to go over here.
Right. No, that's the best part, is it's all about you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk safety. That often comes up in the conversations where people have concerns about safety.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your thoughts are in places where, if you've had any experiences where things felt a little bit uneasy, and how you worked with that, as well as, so two-part question.
Yeah.
As well as, what are your husband's thoughts on your solo travel?
He's always been pretty supportive of it, as long as, I'm not leaving him in the lurch with all kinds of responsibilities at home. I mean, usually I do leave him in the lurch with all kinds of responsibilities at home, but he's been very supportive about it. And he doesn't worry too much, I think, because I have a lot of experience traveling. I am pretty cautious about how I carry myself, how I carry my money. I'll turn my rings inside out, or upside down, so I'm not showing my diamonds. And I don't usually wear very much jewelry when I'm traveling anyway.
Sure.
I try to dress down so that I'm not sort of an obvious glitzy tourist wherever I am. When I'm traveling, I like to kind of fit in. Now, being a blonde in Cuba, I'm not going to fit in like
right.
But but I did some research beforehand. People assured me that there's very little crime there, very little street crime. And so I didn't worry about it too much. I mean, I used my regular street sense from being a city girl. And I wasn't walking down dark alleys at night, but I was walking on the streets after dark by myself, and just being aware of my surroundings. I mean, that's the most important thing. Just kind of be aware. If somebody starts walking a little too close, cross the street, go into the next bar or
absolutely.
Hotel. Yeah. So, and there I found that there might not be street crime, but there was a lot of street hustling going on. People were offering to take me, to whatever tourist destination they thought I might want to go to in exchange for a couple of dollars or whatever. And, I kind of realized that was going on, but I was kind of enjoying just talking to people. And so I did kind of let myself be had a couple of times, but it was only a matter of a few dollars here and there. And so, I don't know, it was fun. I knew that it was going on. I knew that this guy who was offering to sell me the best Cuban coffee for $10 was probably hustling me a bit. I
Got
think
it.
I could have gotten the same for about $1 somewhere else. But it was kind of fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost like playing a game in a good way.
Right. I mean, because I wanted to know what the street hustles were too. Because I want to be able to tell other people, you know, if someone, offers to guide you around the Museum of Modern Art, maybe they might not necessarily be qualified.
Exactly. That's pretty funny, actually, when you think about that. But that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next for you.
Oh, I am really excited about my next trip. I'm going to Haiti, which has been in the news lately. And I'm going to go there for about a week to meet with locals and try and get some interesting stories there. I want to learn about some of the music traditions and some of the pop music of today. And what else am I doing? I'm going to stay at a brand new hotel there in Port-au-Prince.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes. And I'm just excited to see what it's like there. I've never been there. And this opportunity came up for me to go with my sister-in-law, who's got a totally different reason for going down there. But I thought it would be great to experience another country where I haven't been before, especially now that it's in the news.
Right.
I want to be able to see for myself what the country is like. I know that every Haitian person I've ever met here has been really interesting, really fascinating people.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it in person.
That's awesome. And what about additional upcoming family trips? How old are your kids now?
They are 17 now.
Okay.
They'll be graduating from high school this year. And we're still trying to figure out our family trip for when they graduate. Of course, since I have twins who are both going to college at the same time, my budget for travel is a little less than normal.
Right.
But yeah, we're trying to figure out if we're going to go to an island in the Caribbean or go visit some national parks out west. Because we haven't really, despite having taken them around the world, we haven't taken them to those national parks in, Colorado, Arizona, and Mexico. And they kind of want to do that. So that might be our next trip.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the moms who are listening to the story that you've shared so far. Mm-hmm. And they're, a little hesitant. What are some of the tips that you'd be giving them to say, what kind of planning tips, and then the ability to seize the moment? What would you suggest for them on that?
Well, there are a couple of things. I know a lot of people think of international travel as very expensive. And yet some of those same people will spend $5,000 on a long weekend in Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to show people that, I mean, there are a lot of places where you can go where your dollar goes very far. And there are places that are lovely. I mean, Thailand comes to mind. It takes a long time to get there. But you can find reasonable flights to get there sometimes. And once you're there, I mean, the cost for a nice hotel with breakfast and a pool might be $35 a night. You can sit on the beach, have a beer for $1, or drink from a coconut. Someone will come and offer you an hour-long massage for less than $10. You can have a lot of fun there, and the people are lovely, and the beaches are amazing.
Absolutely, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of people, I would recommend make a list of places that you would be interested in going. Set up an airfare alert. I have that for several places.
Sure. Which tool do you use for that?
Lately, I've been using a tool called Kiwi. That's an app. I think you can also do it online. And I've just found that includes a lot more airlines than some of the others. So it usually comes up with some good deals. You can also specify sort of a general region rather than saying one airport.
Nice.
Yeah. So, if I want to go somewhere in the Caribbean, but I don't know, exactly which island, I can just draw the map there and it can give me the best deals. So I'm fond of that one. But I also use Skyscanner. I use Hipmunk. I use Cheapo Air sometimes.
Okay. Have you ever run into any troubles using the third party for booking, or do you source the prices on the third party apps and then go direct for booking? What's been your
I normally will do that, the latter. Look for the deals through one of these apps and then buy my tickets directly through the airline. And sometimes the price might be a little bit different, but I think you have more protections when you buy your flight straight from the airline as opposed to one of these third parties. So that's what I would recommend. But I do follow a lot of airfare deal websites and services. There's one, what is it called on Facebook? Secret Flying, I think is the name of it.
Really?
Yeah. And that will tell you great deals. The only thing is you can't really specify what area you want to see the deals from. So you might see this great deal on a flight from Paris to Dubai. That might not be really relevant to you. But it will, lately I've seen great deals to Europe for like $350 round trip on there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I do follow a lot of those because I don't always have an idea of the next place I want to go. We were talking about this before that, if I see a great deal somewhere that is on my list of 15 places that I might like to go, I'll go. A few years ago, I saw a great deal on flights to Hawaii, and that was nowhere near the top of my list of places that I wanted to go, but I would like to go to Hawaii, well, everyone should go at some point.
Yes.
And so we bought tickets and made it happen. And that was a really amazing trip. I liked it even much more than I thought I would.
Well, and what's interesting, like you said, we were talking off the air, I'm an opportunistic traveler. If somebody says, hey, I'm going here, would you like to join me? Or other types of conversations like that, the answer is typically yes. Yeah. And, let's figure it out. But watching those deals can sometimes be inspirational in and of itself, especially when you're planning for almost 4 adults to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. Where all will have their own opinions and things like that. So it does make a difference. And knowing what you can do from an affordable fashion is very helpful.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, sometimes we'll work backwards from a budget and say, here's what we have. And if we can get the flights for this much, then we can stay in this kind of a hotel. If the flights are going to cost this much, then, maybe we'll stay in a hostel or, some other kind of setup that's not as expensive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's great. So let's make sure that my listeners know where to find you, so that they can connect with all of the different things that you do and, follow what's you're up to coming next.
Okay. Well, my travel planning website is alloverthemap.travel. And from there, you can get to my blog where you will see my stories about where I'm going. And I also, I like to have stories from other people about their trips. So people are welcome to contact me about talking about their vacation or, their most recent travel. I love to share these stories.
Awesome.
And the website for my small group travel company is unquotetravel.com. And we're just releasing our new website. I think today is our day. So
awesome.
You can check out that for small group tours all over the world. They're a lot of fun. They're actually a great way to start your sort of independent travel. If you don't really want to go by yourself, a small group tour like ours, we do very independent style travel where we meet you. We take public transportation oftentimes. We go to local restaurants. We stay in small family-owned hotels. We keep the prices low, and we have kind of immersive experiences in a country. And it's a great way if you want to sort of take that step towards independent travel, but stay with a group. Could be a good way to do it. So that's unquotetravel.com.
And like I said, I'm a huge fan of those types of opportunities for people to travel solo, so you're not worried about taking care of anyone else but yourself, but you're in a group, so you don't have to worry about doing the planning, and you really don't have to worry about a lot of the safety and things like that. I really believe that's the best of both worlds. So I'm so excited to see what you guys have coming up next.
Great.
Paige, I really appreciate you taking the time that you shared with us today. And I think inspiring folks about the family travel with twins, middle school age twins, is quite something. And I look forward to reading on your blog how your trip to Haiti goes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. It's been my pleasure. Wasn't it great to hear the stories and tips that Paige shared with us today? Thinking about some of those apps, it really is just helpful to spend some time dreaming and then spend some time planning. If you love these stories and want to help support Go Solo Live, you can do that by making a small financial contribution to the show. There are lots of options with some great gifts of appreciation at www.patreon.com/GoSoloLive. That's patreon.com, and show some love. Well, sisters, we've reached the end of today's episode. But the conversation doesn't have to end there. Follow us on Twitter at Go Solo Live and make sure that you share your favorite episodes with your followers. If you like what you've heard, please invite your friends to listen. And if you'd like to be a guest, reach out to me at jennifer@transformviatravel.com. Until next time, remember, go solo, but not alone.